3, 2, 1.
We're going to call the meeting for Akron City Council to order. Clerk will read the roll.
Baylor.
Aye.
Connor.
Aye.
Freeman.
Aye.
Fusco.
Aye.
Kamer.
Aye.
Lombardo.
Aye.
McKittrick.
Aye.
Malik.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Amobian.
Aye.
Samples.
Aye.
Somerville.
Aye.
Swirsky. All members are present except for Swirsky.
Thank you. At this time, we will be led in prayer by Rabbi Elise Joy Oster. Immediately following our prayer, will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilwoman Baylor. Rabbi?
Oh, Holy One, thank you. Oh, Holy One, we ask for your blessing for healing. We are all in need of healing, healing of the body, healing of the soul, healing in our families, our communities, and in the world. And when we receive your blessing, it is as if a light has shone down on us, your light, God. Please, God, illuminate the path for us of righteousness, of friendship, of generosity, and of healing. Let your light shine through in the faces of all those whom we meet. Tonight, we celebrate the 5th night of the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah. Hanukkah is a holiday which celebrates the freedom to live in harmony alongside people who have different beliefs than ours, and where we can be assured the safety to live out our own beliefs. Let us all come to this holiday season with open hearts, mending hearts, and God's gift of light. Amen. I will now sing the 2 Hanukkah blessings over the candles, which honor that miracles happened and still can. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Chanukah. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asa nisim lavoteinu, bayamim ha'am, ba'azman hazeh. Amen. Happy holidays.
Thank you so much, Rabbi.
I pledge
I pledge
allegiance
allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America
and
and to the republic
for
which it stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The minutes from our previously held meeting have been provided. Are there any corrections or additions? Seeing and hearing none, can we get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Thank you so much, Councilman Fusco. And Councilwoman Connor, would you second that?
I'll second that.
Roll call.
Baylor.
Aye.
Connor.
Aye.
Freeman.
Aye.
Fusco.
Aye.
Kamer.
Aye.
Lombardo.
Aye.
McKittrick.
Aye.
Malik.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Amobian.
Aye.
Samples.
Aye.
Somerville.
Aye.
The minutes pass 12-0.
Thank you so much. Before we move into our consent agenda, we do have Mayor Horgan online with us who wants to bring forth some remarks.
Well, good evening. Well, first of all, thank you. I know this year has been probably like no other in our lives and probably in our public service lives. But I think many, if not all of you, have done a tremendous amount. And I know the community appreciates your service, but done a tremendous amount, I think, to alleviate a lot of the fears that are out there. So as we move forward into 2021, I think there's a significant amount of hope out there as we can continue to move forward. But I wanted to thank you for your service and to wish you and your families a blessed holiday and a well-deserved break over the next couple of weeks. So God bless, and we'll see you in 2021. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Mayor Horgan. Before you, you do have the consent agenda. Can we get a motion to approve, Councilman Fusco?
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
A second by Councilman Kamer.
I will second that.
Roll call.
Baylor,
Aye.
Connor,
Aye.
Freeman,
Aye.
Fusco,
Aye.
Kamer,
Aye.
Lombardo,
Aye.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Samples,
Aye.
Somerville.
Aye.
The consent agenda passes 12-0.
We do have a public hearing scheduled this evening. Going to ask if clerk will read in item number 1.
Notice is hereby given that the following public hearing will be held by the Council of the City of Akron on Monday, December 14th, 2020, during the council meeting at 7 p.m. Ordinance authorizing a conditional use to construct a new housing development at 1870 Akron Peninsula Road.
Mr. Antonucci?
Yes, thank you, Madam President, members of council. Petros Development Group is requesting permission to construct a new housing development at this location, as residential uses are not permitted in this UPD 22 district. Petros Development Group is proposing to construct 197 residential townhome units with attached garages. 169 of these units will be for rent apartments. 28 of the units will be for sale homes. The development will include a mix of 4 unit types, including 1-story ranch townhomes and 2-story townhomes. The total project site area is approximately 76 acres. The development will include approximately 54 acres of open space, which is 71% of the project site. The open space includes approximately 9 acres of private open space to be utilized by the residents of the new development and 45 acres of public open space fronting on the Cuyahoga River. Petitioner states that all of the proposed residential construction will occur outside of the FEMA 100-year floodplain. All stormwater management for the new development will be accomplished on the site. Petitioner proposes to return 45 acres of riverfront property to a condition with native vegetation. This will allow the land along the river to serve as a more effective floodplain than the existing manicured golf course. A full traffic study will be necessary to determine final required traffic control measures. The project has been thoroughly reviewed by Public Service and Office of Integrated Development and Public Service Divisions. The petitioner has made substantial adjustments to the proposed site plan per city recommendations, resulting in an improved site layout and overall design. Proposed residential use is more compatible with the character of their surrounding area than the commercial uses allowed under the UPD 22 zoning. Construction of these new housing units will further the goal of increasing the city's population in accordance with planning to grow Akron housing strategy. The Office of Integrated Development, planning staff, and Planning Commission recommend approval, subject to the conditions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Antonucci. I know that we do have many people who are online currently with us who wish to bring forth remarks. So at this time, just going to ask anyone who is willing, is here to bring forth comments as relates to our public hearing, ask that you all be sworn in by a member of our law department at this time.
Thank you, Madam President. Folks, if you're here to testify tonight, if you could please take a minute to unmute your microphone. We're going to swear you all in at once. I'm going to try and look through the screen and make sure as best I can that you're unmuted. Mr. Modick, it appears that you're muted.
I'm unmuted. I have 2 screens, one to share on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Pitchford?
I will not be testifying tonight.
Okay, then it looks good. If you could all please raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
I do.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Greg Modick, do you want to start us off?
Yes, if it's appropriate, may I share my screen as I present?
You can.
All right, thank you. All right, good evening. Greg Modick, 10474 Broadview Road, Broadview Heights, Ohio. Thank you very much to everyone for your time and consideration this evening and with this application, as well as to those of you that are returning for the second time today with regards to this. Apologize in advance for those that did hear some of this already, but myself just want to give a little bit of my background. I'm a licensed civil engineer in the state of Ohio, spent over 18 years designing residential subdivisions, working on things such as stormwater management, floodplain restoration, floodplain fills as well. Proud graduate of the University of Akron with a bachelor's in civil engineering as well as surveying and mapping. There's 4 topics I'd like to cover tonight. General categories, planning and zoning, conservation, environmental, and economic growth. Earlier today, we had Derek Schaefer with West Creek Conservancy speak with regards to the conservation component, and Greg Snowden from Davie Resource Group speak to the environmental component. Those two were unable to join us this evening, but I believe in the packet distributed to council, you had some information provided by them. My big takeaway is I always try to listen throughout the course of these meetings to not only the planning commission and council folks, the city staff, but also the residents, even those speaking in opposition pertaining to our plans. A lot of the takeaways from the planning commission were that the group was not anti-development, but anti-unplanned development. Today, there was a lot of conversations this afternoon pertaining to wanting to wait for a plan and further studies. In fact, it was asked that full detailed engineering studies be put forth now. There was also a lot of conversation pertaining to floodplain being unusable. I want to start by saying that we've been working with the city of Akron for 7 or 8 months now, and the city officials. We are very well aware of the citizens' concerns from what they voiced to us, as well as those that the city projected to us when we immediately brought this in. I've said before, and I'll say again, when we started this project, our market studies showed and kind of warranted that this project should serve approximately 600 to 800 apartment units, 3 or 4 story walk-ups. We were unsure about that. We had open discussions with Akron, and that was immediately dispelled that we wouldn't be doing that. We didn't feel it was the right use for this property. And part of that was the environmental impacts. We started off with 48 acres underneath contract to develop this project on our first submissions to Akron. In working with Akron, we moved forward and we added additional land to the property to grow the areas that would be conserved and protected. And the plan that we have in front of us really furthers the plan of Akron's need to grow residents. It follows in accordance with their partnership with AARP for senior housing. The majority of these units shown are ranch units. They have single story living, 2 bedrooms, and are targeted toward the 55 and older buyers here. And I want to state that, the conditional use, if it were to be passed at whatever appropriate time that may be, that doesn't give us the right to start construction. Certainly there's further studies that are needed, but it's the first step in many steps throughout this project. We will hire the licensed engineers, surveyors, biologists, environmentalists to prepare the studies, traffic engineers, and supply that to the folks that you guys work with all day, every day on the city administration, the city engineers, the environmental engineers, planning and zoning departments. And simply put, if we don't meet the mark on those studies and do what's required by the codified ordinances of the city of Akron, as well as the surrounding agencies, we're not going to be able to move forward with the project. They would be there to stop that and to disallow us from moving forward. The areas that I talked about associated with additional land add, I just want to point on my screen here, up in this area right here, There was originally not part of our plan that was submitted. It's the collaboration that we've had with the city of Akron to understand the needs and listening to the folks that, there may be a need in area for parking for public access. So we've acquired additional acreage up there to allow for parking. Additionally, there was conversations about potentially adding a pedestrian bridge across the Cuyahoga River at a later date. We went out through this process and reached out to the owners and acquired this piece of land right here as well too. Now, I want to be clear, we're not sitting here saying when it says proposed, this is a conceptual plan. We're not proposing that we're going to go out and build this. We're proposing that we brought in a very well-experienced and well-versed partner in Derek Schaefer with West Street Conservancy to help us guide us through this preliminary process. And this is not uncommon for what he does. He typically will put this together and work with other agencies such as Metro Parks, state officials, federal officials at times, other conservation partnerships in order to create the funding and the plan necessary for public access to these areas. A lot of conversation did take place with regards to the environmental aspect of what we're doing here. And what I want to state is that within our own development portion, 30 acres of the 78 acres is all we're developing. There's 9 acres of green space within that 30 acres. That's 30% green space on the development area. We will be providing the appropriate stormwater management, including water quality and retention that's in accordance with all rules and regulations. And we won't just meet those, we will exceed those requirements. Additionally, by providing this area of the floodplain to a conservation group, the opportunity is there to replant it and restore it. And what that does is provide better water quality for the overall watershed. The connotation that a floodplain is an unbuildable area is simply not true. FEMA floodplain has a very deliberate process in which you can fill a floodplain. Even without filling it, there's uses that can be done out there, such as agricultural uses, currently with it being a golf course, mowing the grass down low and applying pesticides. So if ever there's an area that is to be protected, it's just this, it's the floodplain. So when we say that we're putting this area and transferring it to a conservation group to look for these future conservation and protection mechanisms, that's what we're trying to do here. The last thing I want to close with from a planning perspective is, a typical conservation development across Northeast Ohio, which we develop in a multitude of markets. And I had the experience of designing subdivisions in many of them in my prior career. A typical conservation subdivision is approximately 30% open space. Furthermore, 50% is what's considered a high-end conservation development, protecting 50% of the area. We're proposing 73% of green space of the land that we're developing. If anything, this should truly be the poster child for how conservation development should be done in the Merriman Valley. With that, I'll turn this over to Mr. Petros to speak to with regards to the economic impacts. And if there's any questions that the council members may have at any point this evening, please ask and I'd be glad to answer them. Thank you again for your time and consideration.
Hello, Sam Petros, 10474 Broadview Road, Broadview Heights, Ohio. It was a pretty rough meeting earlier today with a whole lot of information that I believe is very incorrect. So I just want to go down a few facts so that we all understand. First of all, this is zoned for industrial, and someone could go in here and right now build a paint factory, aluminum plating, trash hauling, car repair. Any of that could happen on any of these 70 some acres. It's all viable, it's all doable, it's all possible. That's what's here now. That's number one. Number two, what we're proposing is all private infrastructure. The city of Akron will only have to supply fire and police, and we hope to not really need either. The rest of it, snow plowing, garbage hauling, maintenance of the streets is all on us forever, right? It'll never become a drain on the city of Akron. It will always be an asset to the city of Akron. Without the 15-year abatement, without your policy, we wouldn't be here right now. We wouldn't be able to deliver a very nice neighborhood that has gone from 3-story walk-ups, which by the way, are all over the valley. I'm not making it up. You can drive around and see it, to this 1-story product that delivers a very safe and comfortable way of living. People can pull into their own garage, go into their apartment, have nobody above them, below them, and they have a patio in the back. They have their own heating and air systems, which is important right now with COVID, but is also important in any flu season. So we're able to deliver all of this green space. We're able to deliver a very safe alternate style of rental to the valley. And we're able to deliver all these sidewalks and a lot of architectural changes that we've worked with the planning department in Akron, because we have this 15-year tax abatement. And I want you to also understand the beneficiary of that at the end of the day is the tenant. It draws people in. It gives us an opportunity to give them these apartments at a much more reasonable number. These same apartments get $2 a foot in some of the surrounding communities that they're in now. And we're at about $1.30 here. The people that are calling us that live in the area there that want to live here are almost all seniors. Most of those people have been looking for a one-story rental alternative in the area. Most of those people, like myself, have been enjoying the valley and all the things that the national park has had to offer for the last 40, 50, and in some cases 60 years. There will be some students here. There is typically less than 25% students. Those students that typically are here are single mothers whose children are already in the school system and are looking for a safe, easier, affordable place to live and enjoy their lives a little more. It doesn't go to our pocket, it goes to the rest. We had I don't know how to explain all of this racial inequality discussion that we had earlier on. And I just want to take 30 seconds and say, first of all, I grew up on the west side of Cleveland on a laborer's salary. We grew up poor. My dad's hands were harder than wood from working. My mother swept the floors at the barber shop and worked in the kitchen of the nursing home. And we've been blessed. I've worked now 42 years. We're the largest singly owned builder in the Cleveland market. I went through Cleveland schools and I went to Tri-C. And when I went to Tri-C, I didn't have any money. I was 18. And I was able to get an education for $500 and build what I built from that. Last year, I gave Tri-C $1 million to go into financially challenged neighborhoods and students and bring them out and train them in the construction industry, pay everything, their salaries, their transportation, and all of it. It's not like we don't care and we don't know. We're all part of it. We grew up with it, and I understand it deeply. My wife and I were Christ Child's man and couple of the year last year, and we raised over $250,000 for him. We've been part of this our whole lives. I went to school with it. I grew up with it, and I will always appreciate it. And I really, really don't understand how anybody could even discuss it in this case. Now, we're trying very hard, and we have been for 7 months, to work with the city of Akron, with the planning department, with the political side. We put in 28 for sale housing units because it was requested. We changed all the sidewalks, we changed the trees. We did everything that everybody wanted because that's who we work with. That's the professional organization that is there to control the development of this property. So I just wanted to make all those statements. And I also want to just say one more thing. At the end of 15 years, this property will go on a long time. I assume 100. They can go for much longer. And it will pay fully taxes, and it will pay for hundreds of students that aren't there coming out. Remember, we don't cost the city of Akron any money, and we're going to return all that capital back to the school systems. And it's important to me that that gets done and gets right. We always want to support education, especially for those that are challenged. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Petros. We've heard from the petitioner. At this time, we're going to open up our public hearing. We do have quite a few individuals who have signed up to speak during our public hearing. So just going to ask that everyone please keep remarks as brief as possible, as it is really important. We do want to hear from each and every one of you. At this time, do we have anyone who wishes to speak in favor of 1870 Akron Peninsula Road that has not had an opportunity to speak? Anyone to speak in favor?
We have Mr. John Carisi. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong, that has signed up to speak in favor. I see that your hand's raised.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Well, thank you very kindly. My name is John Kersey. I live at 3212 Old Mill Drive in Cuyahoga Falls. I'm a professor of media and journalism studies at Cuyahoga Community College, but for decades before I had that position, I've been quite concerned about the environment. In 1981, I co-wrote a proposal to the Ohio Department of Natural Resources that resulted in the development of Northeast Ohio's first ever newspaper, glass, and aluminum recycling program, which began in 1982, which was a long time ago. As I was moving out of the public relations role and beginning to teach at Tri-C full-time, one of my last projects was done on behalf of Providence Baptist Church, which is on Kinsman Avenue in Cleveland's east side. They were being unjustly deprived of the ability to use land that they had purchased in Euclid. And through public relations, I was able to help them win that battle, something I am pretty proud of. 2.5 years ago, my wife and I and her 91-year-old father moved to Summit County, and we're very happy. We're Cuyahoga Valley 2-3 times a week. I have seen this proposal, I've seen other proposals, and honestly, I'm pretty excited about this because I think one of the things that will help Akron build and maintain the population it's trying to do is when it gives its residents a choice. And this development is located in the Woodridge School District, which gives the people who live there a choice of either moving into a new home that might be built in Akron or a new home that might be built in the Woodridge schools. And I think that is important. And I think that that would probably add some diversity to the Woodridge School District if this proposal goes through as well. According to Business Insider, there have been 800 golf courses that have closed in the last decade. Millennials don't like to play golf. So these courses are going unused. The land's being abandoned. It's being zoned in different ways. In my mind, this is an excellent usage for this particular spot. Additionally, I have personal experience with the West Creek Association. I've seen their work in action. When I work at Tri-C, a lot of days I take my lunch hour and go over to West Creek and walk there in the park that they've developed off of Ridgewood Drive in Parma. So I would just say, you know, in terms of Akron's long-term goals, this would be an excellent addition to what it's trying to accomplish. So thanks for the time.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else who's online with us who wishes to speak in favor of 1870 Akron Peninsula Road? Okay. Seeing and hearing none, we'll now move into individuals who wish to speak against. We do have a list, and I think it'll probably be best if we work through that. Walter Davis.
Thank you very much. My address is 4411 Quick Road, Peninsula, Ohio, 44264. My name is Walter Davis, and for the past 11 years, I have served as the superintendent of the Woodridge Local School District. As I'm sure you all know, not all students living in Akron are Akron Public School students. Many of your resident children, those that live in parts of the 1st, 2nd, and 8th wards, are Woodridge Bulldogs. When the city of Akron offers tax abatement, the Woodridge School District loses. With no say in the matter, our board is assuming responsibility for the education of Akron resident children without tax support for the 15-year term of the abatement. Such is already the case in the Heron Crest neighborhood, and now proposed developments in and around the valley may add additional kids with little or no revenue for 15 years. In essence, residents of our other neighborhoods, other cities even, have to underwrite the costs to educate those students coming from new Akron homes for the term of the tax abatements being approved. It is true that when land sits vacant and undeveloped, there is little, if any, revenue from it. It is also true that there are no resident students living on undeveloped land that we are responsible for educating. 15 years is a very long time when you consider a K-12 education takes most kids 13 years to complete. In recent years, the annual pupil cost at a Woodridge education is approximately $11,000 annually. Over the 13 years it takes most kids to complete their K-12 education, the district will spend in excess of $143,000 per child. If that child lives in a tax-abated development, who pays that bill? As a district that receives less than $700 per pupil annually from the state of Ohio, we are heavily reliant on property tax revenues for the majority of our budget. We cannot and should not have to keep returning to the voters from other parts of our district for levy requests to make up these unnecessary losses brought about, at least in part, by tax abatements. It is our understanding that a master planning process is already being planned for the Merriman Valley, with both the city of Akron and the city of Cuyahoga Falls funding and participating. Why approve development in the valley now prior to that planning process? Why not wait to ensure that whatever development can occur should occur as the communities collaborate to develop and implement a vision for what the valley could and should be? As clear stakeholders in what happens in this part of your city, the Woodridge Board of Education and leadership team urge you to pause. Delay all development in the Merriman Valley until the master planning process is completed. As the school district that serves the region, we in the Woodridge schools look forward to being a part of that process. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Davis. Emily Collins.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. I am a resident of Ward 4 at 859 Bloomfield Avenue, zip 44302. I'm also the executive director and managing attorney of Fair Shake Environmental Legal Services. We have an office in Akron and an office in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And we regularly work on land use proposals, specifically in the water quality area. I've looked through the public record on this petition and did a formal public records request. And that request yielded communications from planning staff, as well as the petition itself and subsequent amendments to the petition. And I just don't see any evidence about erosion, sedimentation, or runoff, except some offhand remarks about allowing the golf course to grow without disruption and some tree planting. Honestly, that doesn't address the concerns, very legitimate concerns that I think many people have about the water quality of the Cuyahoga River, that is threatened by two major issues right now. One is increased precipitation, and the other one is development, upstream development. So this falls into those categories in more ways than one. Other areas of the Cuyahoga River have been dominated by vegetation that includes invasive plants like Japanese knotweed that requires excessive public investment for removal and replanting. And that's one of the things that I think Akron should be mindful of, the amount of public investment that's going to be required along the bed and banks of the river if we do see increased precipitation and runoff from developments such as this. There's a single opportunity prior to development to determine whether adequate evidence exists that the proposed use will not result in the destruction or loss or damage of a scenic or historic feature of major importance. The Cuyahoga River is that. And it's the requirement comes into play only in approving a conditional use petition. So right now, the proposed ordinance that's in front of you asks you to kick the can down the road to later detailed engineering analyses and bank stability plans when the conditional use petition standards are no longer at issue. It's well within your power to require those detailed analyses now, so that you and we, the public, can fully participate in evaluation of the proposal against our conditional use standards in the city of Akron. And that's what I'd like to see happen. I'd like to see that we can actually look at those analyses and compare them to the city's conditional use requirements. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Beth Vild.
Hello. My name is Beth Field. I live at 1111 Cary Avenue, Akron, Ohio, 44314. And I am the COO and Director of Programming for the Big Love Network, which is an environmental health equity organization that focuses on the city of Akron, Ohio. We've had a really hard year, everyone. We are in the middle of a pandemic, an eviction crisis in our city, and seeing exactly how both the pandemic is hitting us economically and through our environmental health impacts in an already pretty bad situation as a city. The Gini index, which represents income inequality in any given area and moves between 0 and 1. In Akron, we are 0.5, which is the same as San Francisco. Toledo is a 0.46, Cleveland is 0.49, and Columbus is 0.44. The US average is 0.48. The income inequality that is throughout our city is primarily done through a historically inequitable planning decisions. This is also exemplary in the fact that our rents have increased 48% from 2000 to 2018, while our incomes only increased by 29%. 1 in 4 Akron residents live in poverty. Our evictions, the maps of how frequent our evictions are happening right now mirror red line maps. It is not only the suburbs around us that have contributed to the hollowing out of our urban core. It is also Akron planning decisions, such as the development of Route 59 and large four-way highways that go through our city as regular city roads. And the people of the city are asking that we do not wish to continue down this trend that urban sprawl contributes to. In order to create a more equitable space, the city is looking at the housing subcommittee through the mayoral's recent racial equity committee. Our organization is working closely with Summit County Public Health for an environmental health equity assessment of the entire city. And there is a plan for the Valley getting crafted over the next year. To continue to not go down this trend, I ask that City Council sincerely look at having developers begin to work with their neighbors. It is incredibly important to, even if you look at the amazing things that the neighbors of this particular plot have been asking for, would create more of an economic driver for their neighborhood. And they are simply trying to disclose what they see as their needs for their neighborhood. This is a good thing. It's not easy. As many of you know, we work on participatory design throughout the city and for public spaces. And we do an appreciative inquiry process through the Regional Sustainability Conference. And this work isn't easy, but it's necessary. And I encourage that City Council encourages this developer in particular to work with this amazingly organized group of residents that literally this is their backyard. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Frank Stams.
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman. My name is, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. My name is Frank Stams. I live at 3290 Forest Meadow, Cauga Falls, 44223. I live approximately 1.5 miles from the proposed development. And I'll be brief because Superintendent Davis stole all my thunder. He did such a wonderful job. But I'm here representing the constituents of Ward 8, which in that part of Cuyahoga Falls butts up right against the development. And I just want to echo Mr. Davis's comments and ask for a pause on this development until the joint master plan that Akron and Cuyahoga Falls are currently working on is completed, providing a harmonious future for the Merriman Valley. Additionally, I would like to echo his thoughts on the unfunded population that the Woodridge school system is going to receive and be responsible for. It's going to be quite a burden on the taxpayers here in the Woodridge School District and in Cuyahoga Falls. And also, I'd like to ask for a pause based on that concern as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Andrew Holland.
Thank you, Madam President and members of council. My name is Andrew Holland and my address is 2079 Zurich Trail, Akron, Ohio. I'm an Akron-based business owner, active volunteer in our community, and member of the Preserve the Valley Citizens Action Coalition. Our mission is to engage and amplify citizens' voices in protecting and planning for the future of the Cuyahoga Valley region. We currently have 280 activated and 8,000 aware citizens in our group. The majority of our group are Akron and Cuyahoga Falls citizens. I guess it is fair to call us NIMBYs, as many people in Akron, Cuyahoga Falls, and Northeast Ohio consider the Cuyahoga Valley their own backyard. The media has recently characterized these council meetings as potentially contentious. We want you to know contention is not our goal. We are engaged in this process as fellow citizens that want the best for our community. Our group believes in vision-driven, community-focused development and conservation. It is our hope that all stakeholders, city and county government, developers, business owners, parks, schools, and citizens have a voice in creating a vision for the Cuyahoga Valley during the pending master planning process. However, we understand that decisions regarding the Riverwood development may be necessary before the master planning process can be completed. Within our Riverwood brief, Preserve the Valley has defined key issues that need to be addressed as this potential development traverses the planning and approval process. We provide the Riverwood briefing in the spirit of citizens helping citizens to understand these issues and the potential impact on the community. Our document covers multiple issues: financial, social, and environmental. The issues appear to be simple, but are associated in a very complex manner. I would like to provide an overview of one of those issues: corporate charity through the application of an unnecessary tax abatement, the CRA Community Reinvestment Abatement. City planner, Mr. Jason Segedy said, if the real estate market takes off in certain neighborhoods, the city could remove those areas from the program to attempt to spur growth in other parts of Akron. Data provided to our group by a real estate professional with expertise in the Valley shows evidence of a very successful market. Homes are going under contract in 24 to 48 hours with an average selling price of $225,711. Additional data on the success of the Valley market is provided in our brief. Petros Development clearly understands the value of the Cuyahoga Valley market, as they have launched 3 developments in the past 3 years and are seeking 2 additional developments. We believe that the $13.77 million abatement is not necessary to encourage development in the Valley and represents a divestment from the community, not an investment in Akron. With regards to other developers that may be of interest in the Valley, we know that the recent Tice Road development request for proposal gained interest from developers both local and distant. We believe that the Valley is a very successful market and that multiple developers are interested. We understand that it's been down on its luck in the previous years. However, with the changes in the river and the changes in the Valley, we believe that this is a ground floor opportunity and one that a number of people see value in. If this development moves forward, investment in Akron could be accomplished through a tax increment finance instrument to fund projects mentioned by the city planning memorandum and the developer as being important to the success of the project. During the Planning Commission meeting, several potential benefits of the development were discussed. Public safety, traffic infrastructure, and sidewalks to connect the development safely to the community. Community connectivity, public river access, parking for that public river access, and a towpath bridge connectivity. It's also been discussed that floodplain reclamation needs to be completed. Those projects, however, are not currently funded. The responsibility for the funding of these projects is also not clearly defined. We believe that a tax increment finance program could be created to fund the necessary projects, and this would represent an investment in the community and ensure that these projects are not only discussed, but completed. Thank you, Madam President and members of council. We encourage you to review the council brief and reach out to us, reach out to Preserve the Valley with any questions on the issues presented.
Thank you so much. Nicholas Flesser.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. My name is Nicholas Flesser. I live at 432 South Rose Boulevard, 44320. I'm a longtime resident of the Fighting Ward 4. And I'm not sure how twice in one day I have the highly unenviable task of trying to follow the eloquent comments of Mr. Holland, but I got to work on this. My purpose in speaking with you this evening is to share a couple of additional perspectives on the tax abatement. I echo Mr. Holland's comments, and I'd also like to point out that in my view, this is a highly regressive tax being imposed on other citizens of Akron. It was pointed out in the planning committee meeting earlier today that this is not a regressive tax, but in my view, we have higher end real estate. The individual homes will be selling for $250,000 to $270,000. Ostensibly, that higher end real estate draws higher earning folks, and they'll be taking a 15-year flyer on their property taxes. 15 years is a good long time, as Mr. Davis points out. Also, during that time that these buyers will be enjoying a 15-year tax abatement, the rest of us in the other wards are getting our checkbooks out on a very regular basis to pay our property taxes. Again, the average home value in Akron is $116,000. So you have higher end real estate enjoying a property tax abatement, the rest of the folks in Akron paying their taxes. That to me is a nearly textbook example of regressivity. My simple request to members of council here this evening is to think about how you will respond to questions from constituents in your ward meetings when they're asking questions around why folks in $270,000 homes are enjoying a tax abatement when folks living in an average of $116,000 homes are paying their taxes on a regular basis. It's a $14 million opportunity cost that, quite frankly, I don't think we need to take on in our city at this point. I thank you for your time and attention here this evening, and I hope you all have a very pleasant and safe holiday season.
Thank you so much. Caitlin McCauley.
Thank you, Madam President and Council, for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Caitlin McCauley. I live at 1719 Akron Peninsula Road. I am a member of Preserve the Valley. We have been organizing and networking and strategizing and researching and mobilizing because we care. We have a genuine investment as current residents of Akron and Cuyahoga Falls, which share custody of the Merriman Valley. I technically live in Cuyahoga Falls, but my neighbor, who lives directly across the street from me, is in Akron. I live 3/4 of a mile down the road from Riverwood. So if we want to split hairs and discount my opinion because I'm not an Akron resident, one cannot also discount that I am still directly impacted anytime Akron makes a decision that affects the valley as a whole. The proposed Riverwood development would affect the valley as a whole. I deeply sympathize with and understand Akron's motivation in utilizing tactics to grow the population. However, this Riverwood development is one-dimensional in that the only guarantee to date is the building of 197 townhomes, 167 of which are rentals, which is 85% of the development, fostering little net gain in long-term population growth. While I trust that West Creek Conservancy has an upstanding reputation as a conservation nonprofit, we still don't have any specificities about what investment they will put into this land and to what degree they will be responsible for its rehabilitation, future funding, and maintenance. Regarding the site's amenities, Mr. Modick clarified earlier today that the involvement of Petros Development Group would simply be to prepare the land for the potential future manifestations of trails, a pedestrian bridge, a canoe launch point, floodplain rehabilitation, and community connectivity. As the map currently stands, the pedestrian bridge will simply be an easement. The canoe launch point has no party identified for its realization. The public walking path will lead you straight onto 35-mile-an-hour Akron Peninsula Road. There is no connection to any other trails, there is no public parking, and there are no sidewalks outside of the development that would allow visitors to safely access the site on bike or by foot. So while we've all generated an idyllic vision of this future property, none of the amenities mentioned have any of the necessary resources to get off the ground or even out of our heads. For each of these suggested amenities, we need to see the details for planning, funding, and maintenance written into the final approved legislation for this flood-prone site prior to any advancement of this proposed development. We agree with Akron's desire to grow population and build new developments, but on properties where the greatest resources aren't secondary or even tertiary in priority, lacking the funding they need to truly ever shine. Riverwood is a rare oasis of potential site for tourism, recreation, and lodging that could serve as the southern gateway to the national park and have far greater reaching benefits for the city long term. But only if properly planned and executed, even with Petros as a partner, using the joint master plan between Akron and Cuyahoga Falls, which is set to be underway in a matter of months. I will end with the first definition I was taught in my design education, Gestalt, an organized whole that is perceived as more than the sum of its parts. The Merriman Valley, along with its residents, both current and future, deserve to have a master plan put in place prior to the continued habit of developing this land as individual parts instead of pieces of the organized whole. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Gina Burke. My name is Gina Burke, 1701 Akron Peninsula Road, Akron, Ohio, 44313. Thank you for allowing us to speak and for your service. I deeply respect your work making the hard calls in this incredibly difficult, uncertain time for everyone as we face a health and COVID budget crisis for the city and county in the midst of an extremely uncertain future, which makes the consideration of growth and development as usual extremely difficult to understand. Sometimes taking a pause to assess is wisdom. My home is 100 feet from the Sycamore development of Petros, where he is building 147 townhomes, 40 of them down my driveway without a break. And less than a mile from the Riverwood development. This development did not receive a tax abatement and seems to be selling just fine. One wonders why a developer with a monopoly in this location needs a tax abatement for the second one. Who's that benefit? Why does the developer refuse to engage or be obligated to a community-led planning process that will start in months? How is it politically tenable to give a tax abatement to a developer who refuses to be subject to a master plan paid for by taxpayers in the midst of a budget crisis? Or be subjected to a comprehensive environmental, community, and economic impact analysis that would improve their project? A tax abatement won't improve Akron Peninsula Road, put in the streetlights, or build safe pedestrian mobility pathways to walk to the bus stop
at Portage Trail Extension, which is over a mile, nor will it magically bring public transportation here. This is a road that has semi-trucks traveling at speeds of 35 to 45 miles an hour in this location. At the end of Akron Peninsula Road last month, the county shut down the road because the river has washed out the roadway and there is no planned time for when they'll be able to reopen it. The river will have its way in the valley. This is a floodplain. Any development in this floodplain will eventually be underwater if it is not taken seriously. A $40 million investment creates how much cost for Akron residents to have to pay for? We have a split tax base here. How will public safety, utilities, and infrastructure be paid for by Akron residents? Why is the Integrated Planning Department not embracing a master plan for the region to guide this development? And why won't the developer allow third-party independent data to guide the development of this region for the next 50 years, instead of insisting on always having it just be what he supplies? That's happened every development they've done. All zoning changes should incorporate all stakeholders, not only the developer's bottom line, and address the fundamental questions of what is it worth the cost? What kind of community do we want to live in? Why is it important to citizens, residents, and who pay taxes? What is best for Akron? Finally, I want to just make a comment about, I recently made a donation to the Kenmore Garfield Booster Club to pay for new safe football helmets. Why do they need donations? We all understand the circumstances that is happening in Akron. We understand the difficulty of fielding a football team. We're trying to right now. A 15-year tax abatement means Akron Public Schools will not get funds now, next year, or the next year, or the next year. This is a location that is extremely unique. It needs to be understood for that, and applying a tax abatement just because it's part of Akron is not necessarily the best decision. And it should be at least explored and understood in the context of where it's at. And we are only asking that the council consider that, consider the request of citizens to take a pause. It's months away, this planning process. It's not years. It's not going to destroy anything to take a pause. If you're in Akron, you would understand that probably the University of Akron would have wished for this moment when they were on their, as usual, standard planned growth. If they had only known what was going to happen, they probably would have said, you know what? We probably should pause some of this building that's going on. So with that, I trust you to make a wise and prudent decision. And again, I thank you for being able to speak to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Shelley Pearsall. Hi. I'd like to thank the council for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. My name is Shelley Pearsall. I'm a graduate of the Parma City Schools, and I'm a member of the Preserve the Valley. I live at 1660 Smoke Rise Drive in Akron. Earlier today, a question was raised as to how many of the spokespeople have a water and sewer from the city of Akron. And so I wanted to make sure that I shared that I am a city of Akron water and sewer customer. And I'm happy to tell you
the amount I paid in October, if anybody's curious about that. I wanted to address conservation costs briefly. I formerly worked for the Cleveland Metro Parks many years ago, and I'd like to point out that there's a big difference between setting aside a property for conservation and restoration and actually making that happen. The Valley View Golf Course restoration is happening as we speak, and it's currently has a budget of more than $4 million. It's not a far distance from Riverwood, and so far they've spent $1.5 million taking the golf course back to its natural state. And then they have budgeted another $2.5 million to put in a canoe launch there and to also do river and bank work at the Valley View Golf Course. It's a much bigger property. It's about 200 acres as compared to Riverwood, which is 45. But I think it offers a good cost analysis as to how much it would cost to do some of those things at Riverwood. Just as an estimate, if we're using a Valley View as a comparison, it would probably reach $1 million to do all of the things that have been presented as possible ideas in the plans, not including the bridge. In other words, in order to make Riverwood an environmentally healthy and a publicly accessible space, it's going to take significant investments of time. It's going to take a significant amount of money, and it's going to take a lot of partnerships with some of the local organizations. And I don't see those partnerships existing right now. I don't see Summit Metro Parks at the table. I don't see Cuyahoga Valley and some of the Cuyahoga River conservation groups here. So Preserve the Valley would like to suggest a new way of looking at the issue of who's going to fund these very expensive conservation aspects. Again, we'd like to suggest that the tax abatement is removed as unnecessary and keep those $14 million in Akron. Use some of those tax dollars for this property. $14 million would do a high quality restoration of the floodplain, and it would pay big dividends downstream. It would pay for a canoe launch. It would pay for a bikeway on Akron Peninsula Road, so the 2,900 apartment dwellers who live nearby could use the property. If you put in a pedestrian bridge, obviously that's something that people in the Valley have been asking for a long time. So I'd like the members of council to imagine what they and the schools could do with $14 million in property tax revenue for the next 15 years. And I suggest that we keep that money here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jody Grassgreen.
Yes, thank you. Jody Grassgreen, 699 Weber Avenue, 37-year resident of Highland Square, member of Preserve the Valley, and paying property tax is my civic responsibility that I'm grateful that I'm able to do so. Thank you, Council, for your time and consideration regarding Valley development. I would refer you to pages 6 through 8 of your PTV briefing book. And I'd like you to consider some things that we know. We know that Akron's riparian setbacks are below those recommended by the Ohio EPA. The river is still listed as an area of concern by EPA and the U.S.-Canada Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement, due in part to runoff. A major cause is residential development. We do know all the residents of Akron will continue to pay increases in those water bills due to the billion-dollar sewer upgrades meant to protect the waters of the Cuyahoga River to address storm water runoff. All city residents paying for this sewer upgrade will be subsidizing any Valley housing project. We know whether you care about the environment or not, we are all paying the price of its degradation caused by residential development where it doesn't belong, above and or along the river. It can go other places, just stay away from the floodplains. While it's laudable Akron is involved in getting rid of the dams, such as the Gorge Dam, it's contradictory to put time and money on one part of the river while degrading it somewhere else. That's not how water in the environment works. We know that the Valley's Merriman Portage intersection saw an increase of total crashes and crash rates, 2016 through 2019. We know that outward growth detracts from the legacy city, where we have infrastructure and amenities, and that to continue outward growth, such as this project,
it takes away services, attention, and funding from the legacy city wards. This plan would negate all the good that Akron has accomplished in their neighborhoods, such as the Small Streets initiatives. We know that a phase 1 environmental assessment is not an environmental impact study. And why do we need a comprehensive stakeholder-driven master plan? I respectfully must point out that within the last 50 years or so, city planners have displaced a largely African-American neighborhood and replaced it with a freeway to nowhere, and now a closed inner belt. At the newest project at Hickory and Memorial Parkway, the children who may reside there cannot walk to their neighborhood King LLC because there are no sidewalks at this time. That project required 30% open space, yet it's difficult to see where that area is if you go into that project right now. I ask you to imagine a different way to grow the population and the economy with innovation. I want you to imagine the Horrigan Riverwood Environmental Education Center and Recreation Area. Thank you for your thoughtful service to the citizens of Akron, and please stay safe.
Thank you so much. Hallie Bowie? Hallie, are you online with us? If not, we'll move on to Jessica. And I'm sorry, I am not going to butcher your last name. Jessica, are you online with us? If not, we'll move on to Carolyn Cobal.
Hi there. Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, and thank you, Akron City Council, for allowing me this time to speak. My name is Carolyn Colbo, and I reside at 2325 17th Street, Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. I am a proud first-generation graduate of the University of Akron and a public school educator, having started my career at Akron Public Schools' Project RISE program. I've spent time at the Planning Commission meeting speaking about the potential for the Valley and how rezoning without more information puts that potential in jeopardy. I spoke earlier this afternoon about specific concerns that I have as a neighboring resident about the master planning process and some of the vagueness of Petros's ideas for the proposed public park. I am also part of a group of concerned citizens that I know you guys know about, Preserve the Valley. And as an lay person, the proposed development and park that Mr. Modak has put forward sounds great, but it's been crafted by developers over months and months of private contact with city planning professionals. We've heard Mr. Modak, Mr. Petros, and some Akron employees earlier today cite this multi-month process as a reason that we should see this as a well-planned development. I have no doubt that they have put hundreds of hours of work into this process, but what about us? What about the neighbors and the citizens that want to say, what is our time worth? The master planning process is already underway. It's an active financial investment by both the cities of Akron and Cuyahoga Falls, and it would allow citizens to have a say in what development could look like. Our group has also dedicated hundreds, if not thousands of hours. We've pored over zoning codes, called upon friends for advice and expertise. We've discussed plans, crunched numbers, and this isn't our job. We aren't getting paid for this. We're doing this because we care. So while they can cite hundreds of hours of planning hours and it sounds impressive, it is their job. After genuine engagement with the public, it could be decided that this development is what will serve the Valley best. But how do we know if we don't ask the Valley or the people that live there? I have a place of privilege that has allowed me the time, the knowledge, and the ability to join this call, and has allowed my limited perspective to have more weight than other residents. And I don't feel that is fair or democratic. I want us to use the already underway process to engage other residents so that we can have a visionary master planning process before further decisions on zoning is made. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Scott Myers. And if Scott's not on with us, we'll move to Barb. Oh, thank you, Scott.
Hard time finding the unmute button. Thank you, Madam President, for the opportunity to speak on this topic. I'm here tonight to ask Council to ensure that the master plan include a wide range of voices and inputs. I was born and raised in Akron. I've lived literally across the street from Akron for the last 17 years in Cuyahoga Falls, Ward 8. I was told I need to mention who I am, so you know who's speaking. I've worked in our family business, SD Myers, in every position from Lab Tech 1 to board chair. We work in all 50 states, as well as places like Canada, Latin America, Saudi Arabia, Morocco, and Australia. More recently, we formed a holding company for community impact businesses, such as Miss Julie's Kitchen on South Main Street, in order to have South Main Street in Akron, in order to have more involvement locally. My wife and I are on the towpath or the roads in and around the valley, probably on average 5 days a week for the 17 years that we've lived here. We meet people biking or hiking through the valley from out of town, out of state, and yes, out of the country. They come here to be in and around our national park. We steward a resource valued not just by our residents. There's a sizable community of people not represented here who come here from out of town, out of state, and even out of the country to visit the national park that is within the borders of our 2 cities. You can count on one hand how many cities have a national park within their border. The best news I've heard about our joint stewardship is the plan to have a plan for further development in and around the valley. I'm here to ask you to include as many different voices from people to whom this valley is vitally important. I submitted a list that each of you should have on council of examples of stakeholders who should be included in the input phase of the master plan. Please make sure, please insist that they all be invited and heard. As a final offering, I think it would be fantastic if the 2 cities would form a joint committee appointed by the mayor, council, whoever, whose job it is to keep both cities' mayors and councils informed about events and issues with the national park that relate to our joint living together in the valley with this national park, to keep you informed. So when these issues come up, you don't need folks like us to come and tell you what's happening in the national park. You've already been apprised. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Barb Green.
Good evening. I'm Barb Green, and I live at 532 Parkside Drive in Akron. I've been a Ward 8 resident for nearly 25 years. And though I'm not an environmental expert, I very much love and use our national park and metro parks. And through my work as a nonprofit consultant and as a volunteer, I worked with a number of environmental organizations in the area. I join my fellow citizens who have spoken before me in asking the city to postpone a decision on the development of the Riverwood property until a master planning process for the valley can be completed. You've heard many reasons why. We have a 13.7 million CRA abatement that I and others believe is an unnecessary incentive, and it's regressive. Our city is investing billions of dollars to upgrade our sewer system to improve the water quality of the Cuyahoga River. And yet at the same time, we're considering approving a development plan that is contradictory to our $1 billion investment. And by the way, that development plan also brings additional risk to the potential additional risk to the city of Akron due to the floodplain. And you have only to look at the algal blooms in Lake Erie to know what the environmental impact is of stormwater runoff and farm fertilizer runoff. There are a number of unanswered questions that many have asked about the development pertaining to public access and infrastructural costs and maintenance. And I think we all believe that, as Scott just said, an inclusive deliberative master planning process will enable the city of Akron to do due diligence in assessing a multitude of impacts for any development proposal in the Merriman Valley. The bottom line is we've got choices to make, and we can make a quick decision now without a master plan that will allow Merriman Valley to be further developed for yet more high density housing and rental communities. Or we can hit the pause button and thoughtfully develop a future plan for Riverwood and the Valley that uniquely distinguishes Akron, brings new life to the Merriman Valley, provides hopefully increased economic opportunity for Akron residents and their families. And this is one thing that I think is really important as anybody, individual citizen or leaders of our community. We steward our resources for the benefit of generations to come, not just those that are here today. So again, encourage you to consider all of those factors and put a pause on making this decision until we have a master plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Dallas Allman.
Good evening. I'm Dallas Allman. I live at 303 Timber Ridge, Cuyahoga Falls, although it's Akron. I'm the owner manager of the Towpath Tennis Center, which is directly to the north of the property there that is being considered. I have 12 acres of property there, and this business Towpath was one of the first businesses in the valley as a recreational business. Now, I want to go back and just talk in perspective of the history and what Towpath or my business has gone through. Originally, that location was Northampton Township. And in the mid 80s or early 80s, 70s, I'm not exactly sure, Northampton was split up and there was an annexation process that Cuyahoga Falls and Akron, choices were made as to which cities would provide the best services for those residents. I chose to be with Akron. Now, what happened through that period of time is that between Akron and Cuyahoga Falls, each city sort of made their own decisions, the best decisions for the city, but not necessarily for the valley. And with this group of individuals that have kind of come together organically, it has enlivened me and encouraged me that this is the time that we take a pause and we actually see two cities come together and work on a gem of a piece of property, not just this property, but the whole area. There's issues as far as safety and traffic and just everything else that can really be envisioned for what can happen here. And the history has been that there has been no planning, and this is an opportunity to have a master plan. I would benefit by, I'll say 200 more residents. I'm in favor of the growth there. So I'm in favor of a better valley, and a better valley will come about when we have an inclusive process where we bring all these different concerns together, and we could look back as citizens 50 years from now and say, we made some good choices. So I really urge Akron to take a pause along with the Cuyahoga Falls and just work on inclusively looking at the best possibilities for a future that would make Akron and Cuyahoga Falls destinations for citizens from Northeastern Ohio, and the nation. Let's make our area proud. And that takes time and effort. And I encourage you to take that pause. Thank you for the time tonight.
Thank you so much. Gail Misko. And if we don't have Gail online with us, we'll move to Ben McMillan. And I don't think Ben's on with us. So that concludes our public hearing for this evening.
We actually had just one more person that had signed up. James Yannick is here on the call with us.
Perfect. Okay. James?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can.
Thanks, Council, for listening to me tonight. Actually, I signed up because I got the newsletters in the mail. And I really, when I was asked the question, are you for or against? I wasn't sure. I really just wanted to be a witness to the whole thing to see what's happening because I am a City of Akron employee. I live at 1710 Akron Peninsula Road. My property is exactly next door to the proposed location. And I really hadn't gotten any information until tonight. And as I listened to the whole thing, you know, the 100-year floodplain, I was told 15 years ago when I moved in here that you don't have to worry about that. Well, in the last 15 years, it's flooded down here 5 times. So every 3 years, there's floods down here. I've sent some pictures over to my councilman, Shamus Malik, and showed him all the mud and all the debris that washes up from all the excess of, you know, the water. And even in the new development across the street, there was a lot of flooding there when we were told by the developers there that they would have that under control. But I sent a bunch of pictures of all the flooding that happened over there. So there's an issue with the flooding. And as far as being a witness, I can tell you that a lot of the stuff that everybody said tonight was really true, that the tax levies have gone up every year. My water bill has gone up. And it seems like a lot of this stuff will directly affect those two things. Another thing is, I really didn't know about this master plan. And it sounds like there's a lot of reasons for it, but I haven't heard any reasons to not wait. Maybe the master plan really is the best thing, you know, to come together and show city council and the residents around here what the plan is. I mean, it seems like right now, maybe, you know, when I looked at the papers that were sent, it looks really great. You know, all of the walking trails and undeveloped area, that looks awesome. But how do we make sure that stuff is done? And has the EPA been contacted? You know, I was going to make a suggestion that maybe we put together a committee or something that, you know, all those questions were answered. But it sounds like you guys are already way ahead. I mean, it sounds like this master plan would answer all those questions. So I appreciate the time tonight. I'll just be tuning in to watch and see what happens. I'm still on the fence. It looks great to have this walking trail right in my backyard, but not at the cost of, you know, more flooding, more damage to the river, and the school thing that bothers me a little bit too. Like if my taxes keep going up because they're not paying taxes at all, that would be frustrating. But thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you so much, Jim. I do believe that we've heard from everyone who signed up to speak before council. So at this time, this concludes our public hearing. Councilman Fusco.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to pull the committee to refer this item. Samples?
Aye.
Kamer?
Aye.
Baylor?
Aye.
Swirsky. The Madam President, the report of the committee is to refer this item. I just want to take a moment here and thank everyone who has stepped forward. And we hear all of you, and we appreciate everyone's input, and it will be considered by all of council. And there is a number of questions that was posed. And then we will be doing all we can to get answers for all those. So we, again, thank everyone. And we will be tabling this now until we have, not till next year. So, but thank you for all your input, and thank you for all your concern.
Thank you so much, Councilman Fusco. This item will be referred. Councilman Fusco, what is your pleasure on the rest of the old agenda?
Request of the committee is for time on items 2 through and including 7. The report of the committee on item number 8 is favorable, and we're asking for suspension of the rules.
Any objections on suspension of the rules? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Yes, thank you, President Somerville. This is a development agreement. Actually, I apologize. This is the Akron Summit County Energy Special Improvement District, which was actually passed by City Council December 5th, 2016, is whenever this district was developed. Within this district is properties known as 530 and 540 South Main Street. This is an agreement for levying assessments for 23 years. And the funds will be utilized for energy conservation within these particular buildings, and will be assessed over a 23-year time frame. And it's quite extensive. That's why we asked for time, and we asked that it be passed this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The rules have been suspended and the committee's report is favorable. Roll call.
Baylor,
Aye.
Connor,
Aye.
Freeman,
Aye.
Fusco,
Aye.
Kamer,
Aye.
Lombardo,
Aye.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Samples,
Aye.
Somerville.
Aye.
This ordinance passes 12-0.
Thank you. Councilman Fusco?
Time on the balance of the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, time will be granted. That concludes our old business. We'll now move into new legislation.
Item number 1, offered by Freeman, ordinance ratifying the actions of the administrator of the Akron Municipal Court and contracting on an emergency basis with Cardinal Maintenance and Service Company, Incorporated, for custodial services for daytime sanitizing in high usage and public areas of the Akron Municipal Court, authorizing payment therefore and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Freeman,
Committee's report's favorable. We're asking for suspension of the rules.
any objections on suspension of the rules? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
This will basically continue services to keep frequently used areas sanitized during COVID. And with that, we ask for its passage.
The rules have been suspended and the committee's report is favorable. Roll call.
Baylor,
Aye.
Connor,
Aye.
Freeman,
Aye.
Fusco,
Aye.
Kamer,
Aye.
Lombardo,
Aye.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Samples,
Aye.
Somerville.
Aye.
This ordinance passes 12-0. Item number 2, offered by Councilman Neal, ordinance approving and authorizing the expenditure of $1,000 from the budget of Akron City Council for the purchase of training provided by the Government Finance Officers Association to members of council and other staff and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Freeman.
The committee requested an adverse report.
The committee's report is adverse. Councilman Neal, did you have a comment?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay.
Just wanted to remind members of council that this training was outlined by the governing body that provides the training for our finance department. Our finance department has a membership with them. At the request, I asked them what is the best practice training for a legislative body. Some of these concerns were asked by members of council when we were looking at the budget, putting the budget online. And for the newer members of council, I'd just like to share that legislation was passed by council, but we've never put it online. Council has been discussing understanding the budget for about 4 or 5 years now, so long before you came on council. Here is a tool that is approved by the best practice government body that our finance department is a member of. They put this tool together, $500. Some said they felt that without even taking the training, some members expressed concern that they may know a little bit better than the government body that trains our finance department, that the training may be too simple. Again, we have budgeted $1,000. We could ask them for something more sophisticated. To members of council, because we are at the end of our budget cycle, if we do not spend this allocation, it goes back to the general fund and it's exhausted. If you remember, in January, when we were discussing about our budget and how we were going to meet, at that time, we were supposed to have a discussion about our budget. We've gone through a period of a whole year, and I can only speak from my experience. And I know of at least 3 other council members that have taken a budget class. I don't know how many want to share if they've taken a class. This is the most critical responsibility we have, understanding our city's budget. And to deny collective training so that we have a collective understanding baffles me. This is by the body that provides training for our finance department. And members of council, anyone could bring in this suggestion. We cannot have a discussion about it unless we bring in, per our rules, we cannot have a collective discussion unless someone brings in a piece of legislation. Here is our opportunity. This body, we would not think of sending our police officers out on the streets without training, our fire safety forces out into the streets without training. We would not send someone into our water plant without training. Yet we're going to sit on council and oversee council's budget without any training. That is unconscionable. If not this, any member of council could have brought something in. Again, if you're concerned about the training, there's $1,000. We can increase it more. But if we don't set this budget, we can't have this discussion. And if there's a question about the competency of the organization, this is the very organization that our finance department is a member of. They put together, if you read the document that they sent, they put together best practice training for a legislative body. It usually costs $85 per member for $500 for a total of 13 members plus staff. And we could even invite those members from the community who expressed concern during the protests about being a part of a transparent budget process. So, Madam Chair, I'm willing to answer any questions, but if this is a concern about the quality of training, this is the very agency organization that trains our finance department. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilman Neal. Are there any other comments or questions from council members at this time? Okay. Seeing no hands, we do have a motion. Councilwoman Amobian.
The only thing I'd like to say is that I have attended numerous financial trainings when I've gone to NLC. And I can tell you there is not enough out there. You can never learn too much about budgeting because it is truly complicated how budgeting occurs at the city level. So I value any tool that will continue to provide growth and understanding. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman Amobian. And I think as a collective body, council does value education and training. It's all about figuring out, what training is going to be best for the entire body. Councilman Neal.
Yes, ma'am. I would like to share with council, to Councilwoman Amobian's point. When we go to NLC, one class is $200-something, $150 to $200-something for one person. We're talking about an expense of $500 for our whole council. You're never going to beat that kind of training. And as I stated, been on council for 11 years now. To my knowledge, collectively as a council, we have not had one training from an outside organization regarding the budget.
Thank you so much. The committee's report is adverse. Roll call for adverse report. I'm so sorry. Our clerk's laptop has gone down. Just give us one moment.
Hello.
I got to stand up.
Sorry about that. Everyone, thanks for your patience.
Sarah, your connection's bad. Just 1 second.
About that, can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay. There was an adverse report. Baylor,
Aye.
We might. Just give us 1 second. We're having some technical difficulties.
Connor,
Aye.
Give us 1 second. We're gonna.
sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, from the adverse report, Baylor,
Aye.
Connor,
Aye.
Freeman,
Aye.
Fusco,
Aye.
Kamer,
Aye.
Lombardo,
Aye.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Malik,
Nay.
Neal,
Nay.
Amobian,
Nay.
Samples,
Nay.
Somerville.
Aye.
The adverse report passes 8-4. Item number 3, offered by Fusco, ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to accept title and ownership of the real property known as the Heisman Lodge, located at or near 1000 George Washington Boulevard, Akron, Ohio 44312, and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco.
Yes, thank you, President Somerville. Consent agenda.
This item will be placed on the consent agenda.
Item number 4, offered by Mayor Horgan, resolution approving and confirming the appointment of Ronald Owen to the City Planning Commission and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco.
Request the committees for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Any objections on suspension of the rules? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Yes, thank you, President Somerville. This would appoint Ron Owen, excuse me, to the Akron Planning Commission for a term that would end on December 31st of 2025. Mr. Owen is a active member of the North Hill community, Akron resident, and comes highly recommended. The Planning Department recommended approval tonight, as there is an up and coming Planning Commission meeting. We're hoping to place Mr. Owen on that tonight. So request the committee is favorable. Thank you.
Thank you. The committee's report is favorable. Roll call.
Baylor,
Aye.
Connor,
Aye.
Freeman,
Aye.
Fusco,
Aye.
Kamer,
Aye.
Lombardo,
Aye.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Samples,
Aye.
Somerville.
Aye.
This resolution passes 12-0. Item number 5, offered by Kamer. Ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to accept a grant from the Fire Prevention and Safety Grant from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, authorizing the expenditure of funds for procurement of equipment and provision of services consistent with the grant and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Kamer.
Thank you, Madam President. The committee's report is favorable, and we're asking for suspension of the rules, please.
Any objections on suspension of the rules? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Thank you. This is a great grant. It's approximately $25,000. It's going to help our Akron Fire Department increase fire and CO protection with education to our citizens, and particularly elderly and low-income areas with installation of smoke alarms and CO detectors, and we're asking for passage.
Thank you. The rules have been suspended and the committee's report is favorable. Roll call.
Baylor.
Aye.
Connor.
Aye.
Freeman.
Aye.
Fusco.
Aye.
Kamer.
Aye.
Lombardo.
Aye.
McKittrick.
Aye.
Malik.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Amobian.
Aye.
Samples.
Aye.
Somerville.
Aye.
This ordinance passes 12-0. Item number 6, offered by Councilman Neal. Resolution calling upon FOP Union Lodge Number 7, Akron Firefighters Association Local 330, collectively the unions, Akron City Council, the administration of the Akron Municipal Court, and the administration of the City of Akron to engage in discussions leading to racial equity training to promote governing in a more equitable manner, thereby promoting the growth and success of the city and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Kamer.
Thank you, Madam President. The committee's report is adverse.
Committee's report is adverse. Councilman Neal.
Yes, ma'am. Wanted to thank council for the discussion this afternoon. I think the way the resolution reads coming in is pretty self-explanatory. As a governing body, legislative, municipal, judicial, and the two main unions, it is imperative that we have a shared understanding of what we talk about when we say equitable, be it policy or practice. I think we heard a good part of that just in the disparity and understanding what inequitable policy is in the planning meeting. Some not understanding how a tax abatement could initiate inequitable hardship on members of our community, which it does. Tying this in with the budget thing, we need to understand that so that we can make adjustments. This policy right here is just about us, not as I got to thank Councilwoman Samples for saying this during this afternoon. It's not discrediting what's being done, but we cannot operate in silos. We have to have a shared understanding. And going back to training, especially this body, council learned about inequitable, the Elevate Akron report 3.5 years ago. We had the discussion about trying to understand racial sensitivity and equity when we had the Columbus discussion back in 2017. And this council has not had any formal training whatsoever, yet we vote on policy every week. This resolution is about us having a shared understanding. And I'd like to share this with members of council. You know, our meetings are watched by fellow constituents and on other councils. Of course, colleagues on other councils, constituents throughout our community. After our meeting this afternoon, I got a call from Senator Sherrod Brown's office. His staffers were watching our meeting. They support this resolution, and they'll be sending in documentation to say that. You know, there was a motion put on, and I think it was by Councilman Malik, that we take time, but there was a push for an adverse report. I have to ask why, because I have not, when we talk about racial equity and understanding it, it shouldn't always come from a Black member of council. This is an opportunity for us to learn and have an understanding. And why this council is against a discussion to have an understanding baffles me.
Councilman Malik?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to clarify, I believe that I made the motion for time or raised the issue of time on the other ordinance about the budget training, as I do think some form of budget training, as we discussed, would be helpful. On this issue, I know that all of us, want to support the citywide efforts and particular efforts within departments on understanding diversity and equity better. I don't think that this resolution does that, as we mentioned, by omitting the two of the 4 city unions, and that's not to say that there isn't a resolution that would be helpful in promoting those discussions. I just don't believe this resolution is helpful in promoting those discussions. So, and anyways, I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Malik. Are there any other comments coming from any other council members at this time? I did just want to say that I think this issue is extremely important. It is this body that declared racism as a public health crisis. So we do know that equity and inclusion, is important and it is necessary. But I think what this resolution does not do, it does not bring everyone to the table, and bringing everyone to the table where we can actually have a collective conversation in terms of how we can address that issue, because I do believe that, like Councilman Neal said, shared understanding is important, but I think we do have to have conversation, bring all individuals to the table. So collectively, we can kind of figure out what that looks like, what that training across the board looks like as well. Councilman Neal?
Yes, ma'am. Well, we know the legislative process, a resolution can be amended. So if yourself or a member of council would like to amend so that we can initiate that conversation of a shared understanding. We're 3.5 years in on the Elevate Akron report, and council and administration hasn't even had a discussion. Based on my conversation with FOP President Clay Cozart, who asked me, why didn't I bring something in about this? And I shared this multiple times. I told him I did not feel comfortable asking the unions to do something that we as council, the legislative body and the administrative body hadn't done. So this is before us. Amend the resolution so that it is, if you feel it needs to be more comprehensive, so that we can move on this discussion. 3.5 years in, did we declare racism a public health crisis just because other communities were doing it? Or did we really believe it? Do we really believe it? Because again, we declared COVID a public health crisis and we acted immediately, implementing policies, some controversial, but this council implemented policies. Here, racism is a public health crisis. We're 3.5 years in, and this council has not had one discussion, has not had any formal training. Folks, I mean, again, I go back. We would not send our police force out without any training. We would not, and they have racial equity training, as was shared with us. Our fire department has racial equity training. This council doesn't have any. And this isn't even just about us. This is about us as a city holistically, having a shared understanding. The Akron Public School Board today is passing a racial equity policy, a comprehensive one. I've had conversations with members of the school board. I've had conversations with our chamber. They all agree that we need to have not just, again, silos with the chamber, the school board, and the city, as a city as a whole, the governing bodies, our corporate partners, and the school system. We need to have a shared understanding, because the decisions we make do not just impact one segment. They impact everyone, as has been shared in some of our discussions today. So again, part of the legislative process is we can make an amendment on the resolution. If this is important to this council, make an amendment to the resolution and we can vote on that.
Are there any other comments or questions from any other council members at this time? Councilman Malik?
I just want to again clarify my point by just saying that creating a resolution doesn't automatically create a discussion. Passing a resolution doesn't automatically create a discussion. I think this discussion is important to have, but us doing this does not bring everyone to the table. That legwork is something we all need to do.
Thank you so much, Councilman Malik. And again, myself as council president, I'm definitely willing to do that legwork and bring folks to the table so that we can have that conversation. And I hope this body does that. The committee's report is adverse. Roll call.
Baylor,
Aye.
Connor,
Aye.
Freeman,
Aye.
Fusco,
Aye.
Kamer,
Aye.
Lombardo,
Aye.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Neal,
Nay.
Lamobian,
Nay.
Samples,
Nay.
Somerville.
Nay.
The motion for an adverse report passes 8-4.
That concludes our new business. We'll now move into the portion of our meeting that we refer to as our public comment period. Clerk will read in comments received for this evening.
From Carly Milhone. My name is Carly Milhone of Firestone Park, Ward 7, and I think the Riverwood development should be used for connecting hiking paths, kayak rentals, and CVNP lodging. My name is Cody Milhone of Ward 7, Firestone Park. I want to see lodging, camping, and kayak rentals. Thanks. This is from Donald Mullen. First, and most importantly, my wife Karen and I are praying for the health of Councilman Swirsky. Each Monday I listen to the Akron City Council meetings. Last night I was pleasantly surprised and humbled to hear my retirement from Stark State Akron acknowledged. Thank you and Mayor Horgan for this honor. You really know how to bring tears to an old man's eyes. It has been an honor to work with you and for Dr. Jones. You were instrumental in helping Dr. Jones execute her vision to bring a standalone community college to Summit County. Thank you. A special thank you goes to Councilwoman Samples and Councilwoman Amobian for their very kind words. I was simply overwhelmed. Happy holidays. Thank you for your service and please be safe. Please sign me an Akronite forever. This is from Lee Newman. I was one of the protesters. I was there due to Tara Samples calling me an expletive and inviting us to her house. We were peaceful and didn't enter her property at any time. We were called Peckerwoods and White Crackers from Tara and her family. They threatened us with physical violence, getting shot, sprayed with a water hose, and have thrown eggs on our vehicles. I practiced open carry due to Samples' threats of calling BLM to, quote, take care of us. We left the residence after being asked by police due to their concerns of an officer being injured from Tara Samples' family making threats to us. We have screenshots to prove our claims. Tara Samples is using her race to fool city council and buffalo the public. There was nothing involving race until her and her gang of thugs brought it out. We are the ones that should be pursuing charges and lawsuits along with the police officers that are being thrown under the bus because they were white. You may contact me if needed. Thank you. This is from James Irwin. To set the record straight about the events that occurred on December 5th, 2020 at the residence of Akron City Councilwoman Tara Samples. My name is James Irwin. I am a proud citizen of Canton, Ohio. At the request of fellow believers in civil rights of their right to free speech and peaceful protest myself and other patriots of this great nation in which I'd happily give my life for. Approximately 15 of us gathered on the public sidewalk in front of Tara Samples' house to protest the calling of us out, saying that if we expressed our opinions on the state of our great nation and the perpetrated fraud of our presidential election, that she would call out her BLM and neighborhood wannabe gangstas to take us racists out. While she was 100% correct, there were plenty of racists present. Unfortunately for Ms. Samples, if you watch her own Facebook recording of the entire event, the racists present were members of her own family, most notably her own mother and sons and friends. You will not hear one racist slur or reference come from any member of the protesters, even after being called crackers, Peckerwoods, trailer park trash terrorists, and so on. Yes, there was one member who was wearing body armor, and he was armed for our own security due to Facebook threats made by Miss Samples on Facebook. We were spat at and hose sprayed at us, had personal vehicles egged by thug wannabes who hid behind the police. They so eagerly want to talk trash about. Also, being the first to arrive some 20 minutes prior to anyone else, the police were called and already posted up the block because the fear of Miss Samples, clowns that are afraid to hold an honest conversation about right and wrong and self-entitlement. This generation of Black men and women would make their ancestors sick. I have a ton of African-American friends that will tell you I haven't 1 ounce of prejudice in me. I treat all people as they treat me. You would want respect, earn it. You want nice homes, nice vehicles, and everything in life worth having. Get off your expletive and I owe you nothing. I didn't live in the 1800s and neither did you. I'm over 50% American Indian. If anyone has a right to be bitter, it's my bloodline, but I choose not to rely on others' hard work to pay my bills or buy my groceries. Nobody owes anyone anything in this world. We owe it to ourselves and our future generations to teach the new generations the value of hard work and the pride and self-worth that comes from it. Please, Miss Samples, look in the mirror and ask yourself, have I lived the best life I could each day? If you'd like to do this the right way, I'd be glad to sit on one-on-one and figure out how we can do our small part to make the world we live for future generations a better world. Thank you. Have a blessed day and Merry Christmas to all. This is from James Grover. Please consider and support the redevelopment of the former Riverwood Golf Course into property for recreational use. This southern gate to the CVNP can be much more than a housing development. Please vote with your heads and hearts and not your wallets. This is from Barbara Hanna. If COVID has taught me anything, it is the importance of nature to heal. In hope, I feel that someday I will be enjoying nature there. Let us work together to preserve and strengthen what we have. This is from Gail Bentley. We frequent that bike trail across from Riverwood and would love to be able to bike and hike in the area. Please keep it natural for all the community to enjoy. This is from Maureen Popa. Please do not allow the beautiful green space that was formerly Riverwood Golf Course to be developed into a residential development. The valley already has enough apartments, townhomes, and single-family homes that make evening rush hour coming down Portage Trail and Smith Road through the valley an ongoing nightmare. What we need to do is to turn it into a southern gateway to the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. In addition to trails, water accessible activities, and grassy recreation areas, the Riverwoods property would be an ideal location for a campground or a riverfront restaurant. Merwin's Wharf is a restaurant that sits on the Cuyahoga River in the Flats in Cleveland and is operated by the Cleveland Metro Parks. Merwin's Wharf would serve as an example of what we could do on the Riverwood property. And where else is there a campground in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park? Visitors seeking the outdoor activities of a national park would patronize the restaurants, bars, and other businesses in the valley, Cuyahoga Falls, and West Akron. Instead of building another residential development along with the Tice Road, Sycamore Valley, and Zurich Road Woodland Preserves developments, let's develop our natural resources to create an outdoor recreational destination that we can be proud of. This is from Mike Bigelow. I'm writing to voice my opinion that the Redwood space would be a great expansion for the parks and green space rather than more development. Sprawl and overdevelopment is going to diminish the fleeting Northeast Ohio resources. Akron is a city that can build around tourism for the river or a bike trail. Such is the case for Greenville, South Carolina, a top place to live and visit by many sources, and one I saw many parallels to Akron at its fullest. I see great potential in what we already have, but new development versus repairing old moves us all further from the mark. Please take my opinion into consideration. Thanks. This is from Katrina Dunn. I'm a concerned Akron resident urging you to consider how the former Riverwood Golf Course could be reinvented as an area that would serve the broader community in an environmentally conscious, equitable manner. Akron does not need a housing development. Akron needs options for its current residents to enjoy the outdoors. I look forward to seeing how you will care for everyday Akronites. This is from Matt Onifer. We need to rethink the valley and effects on the CVNP and preserve our community. This is from Jill Cave. I fully support using the balance of the Akron Cares funds to pay off water bills for Akron residents who have fallen behind in payment during the pandemic. If possible, residents over 65 and residents with minor children should be prioritized. If that is not feasible, then all bills where arrearages should first occurred after March 9th should be paid first and in full. Then the balance can be spread across remaining accounts. This is from Ryan Mosley Glenn. The events that happened last week and the continual online threats thereafter against my mother, Councilwoman Tara Mosley Samples, and grandmother is frightening. I personally watched in person masked white men and a white woman threaten our family. As a homeowner and taxpayer in this city, I am disappointed in this city and the lack of support from this council. It has been painful to watch my mom care more for people than they care for her. As I watched and listened to the comments from the last Monday's meeting shows just how racially divided this city is. I also watched the demeanor and eye rolls from a few that serve on this council as these comments were read. Those who continue to threaten my mother with no response from those who were sworn to serve and protect us is telling not only to our family but to this community. As my daughters witnessed name calling, they were frightened as well as they heard the yelling outside of their grandmother's home where they spend weekends with them. My children also witnessed me, their mother, being called an expletive as I defended my grandmother, who has a bad heart and who has recently lost her husband, my grandfather. I do hope something has changed so the next protest that council person and their family will be protected and not be harassed. This is from Beanne Clipper. I wanted to express my opinion about what occurred at the Mosley Samples home recently. Being elected a public official is a job. Elected officials are still human beings with families, feelings, and obligations outside of work. I believe that if there is a concern with the job that as individual is doing, the concern should be expressed at their jobs. Protesting at someone's private home for a work-related decision is disrespectful and should be illegal. There is little to no chance that issues will get resolved by arriving at a person's home after dark, wearing bulletproof vests, hiding your identity through masks, waving the flag of a person that you are known to oppose, and wearing a monkey suit. These tactics are clearly meant to inflame and intimidate. This protest was held without regard to the other occupants, visitors, or even the other citizens in the neighborhood. I ask myself how I would react if, while enjoying my young grandchildren in my home, I look outside and there is a group of angry people demanding that I come outside to talk due to a decision that I made at work. Though I have replayed the scenario many times, I honestly can't say that I would have reacted in any other way. What would I do if I felt unsafe and intimidated in my very own home? I would call the police for protection. But wait, this was not an option for Ms. Samples or Mrs. O'Donnell because the police were there. On protests that I have watched on television when the police are present, they are close enough to the involved groups that they could easily intervene if needed. In this case, it was not until friends and family of Ms. Samples arrived that police presence was even noticed. I will not comment on who was right or who was wrong, as I do not know enough about what happened before that night to form an opinion. However, I can say with all certainty that this was a personal attack on Ms. Samples and not an organized protest with an agenda. The protesters claim that their rights were invaded due to the mandate that they were protesting. But what about the rights of the people in the house? Do they have rights? Does Ms. Samples have a right to have a life outside of her job? Does Mrs. O'Donnell have the right to grieve in her own home after losing her husband? Do Ms. Samples' grandchildren have the right to enjoy a Saturday night with their grandma? It is a privilege to wake up every day and only be responsible for decisions that affect myself and my family. Unfortunately, elected officials don't have this luxury. They are charged with the responsibility of making decisions based not on what is best for them individually, but what is best for the community as a whole. To bring personal criticism for business decisions just doesn't seem morally correct. I hope that city can assist in finding ways for citizens to express their concerns or disagreements in more orderly and civil ways. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to voice my opinion. This is from Daryl Kleinhens. He says, we need a plan. Please take time on this issue. This is from Tara Good. I have been following with concern the saga of the former Riverwoods Golf Course property. That anything other than conservation and public use is even being considered for this property is astounding to me. You have an opportunity to add this piece of land to our park system, to preserve riverfront access and green space for future generations to enjoy, to help build a green belt stretching across Summit County. Akron can build upon the legacy of the Cuyahoga Valley National Park and the Summit Metro Parks to help improve water quality and quality of life for Akron, Cuyahoga Falls, and all of the local communities that enjoy the Cuyahoga River watershed. Do not let this rare chance pass by. We'll be kicking ourselves 10 years from now if we do. We do not need new housing in this area. We do not need additional stressors to safety in school systems or traffic flow. Spend your housing development dollars improving existing housing and reimagining neighborhoods that are asking for your assistance. Keep the valley green and the river clean for the next generation. I also have some voicemails.
Damian from North Hill. I just wanted to speak about some of the unrest that's happening right now in the city. We're having elected officials be threatened, and just the mood in the city right now is just so grim. I would love to see, more, from the county and the city leadership to kind of bring us together, because this is really getting out of hand. It's starting to become very dangerous. I work with young people, and the things that we're seeing go against everything that we mentor, teach, and coach them to not become, to be angry and to be violent. The protests that we're seeing, a lot of the times when they're going to elected officials' homes, dressed in military garb like that, this is dangerous. This is a dangerous door to open. I have children in the city. I work with hundreds of children, and this is a horrible example that the adults are setting right now. Regardless of whatever your political affiliation is, we got to find a better way to do better, because this is not working, and this is really, really setting a dangerous tone for young people. We already got way too many murders happening in the city right now. I think more than we've had, and I don't know how long. And this extra stuff over politics right now is really getting out of control. We got to be able to protect the people that have been voted in, whether we agree with what they voted, how they vote or not. Everybody has a right to peace and protection under the law, in my opinion. So I would just like to hear more from, the mayor and, the county executive, and maybe even the governor, just on how we can pull things together. So, thank you.
Akron City Council, this is Casper Akron Buckets from Anonymous, Akron, Ohio. Address is the internet. So we are not your enemy. We don't want to be your enemy. We are not responsible for the latest video attacking you guys. We are not responsible for the protests at your houses. We don't believe in bringing your family members into this. They're innocent. This is not our doing at all. We're not affiliated with that person that's responsible for this. He's not one of us. He's not in any of our chats. We don't condone what he's doing. We condemn it. We're terribly sorry for what he's doing. It's not okay. We don't support any kind of political affiliations for either side. Violence is never okay. Bringing guns to protest outside of people's houses is not okay. Showing up at you guys' private residences is not okay. We can find some common ground. We're not here to hurt you guys. We're not your enemy. All right? Thank you.
This is Akron resident Joe Parker, Shoreline Drive. The nature of my call is concerning the attempted terroristic act that was placed on one of our elected officials. My message goes out to the mayor and city council. My question is, what's next? When the next terroristic act like that occurs again? A few days ago, a group of morons attempted to intimidate one of Akron City Council members, Tara Samples. This attempt was brought on by a group of cowards that snuck in the dark to instill fear on women and children. This was done in the same year that America lost a great protester, Senator John Lewis. This orchestrated effort to attempt to intimidate at the Councilwoman Mother's house was not a protest. As men, we all have been taught to protect women and children by any means necessary. I would like to thank the morons because free publicity is priceless. And your cowardly choreographed tactic is just making Councilwoman Samples more powerful in Ward 5 and in Akron. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Nathan Glenn. My address is 615 Gibbs. I am the son-in-law of Councilwoman Terry Mosley Samples. I was one of the family members that was there December 5th, 2020. That entire night was crazy. I've never experienced a live protest in front of a government official's home at 6 o'clock in the evening in my life. In fact, we had people in masks. They were wearing gorilla suits, and they were pondering around making monkey sounds. Clearly, y'all, we know what that means, right? That wasn't even half of the foolishness. We had people in full body armor with 40 Glock pistols and AR-15s. AR-15s, people. They was waving Trump flags, wearing Trump jackets, Trump hoodies, and even Trump masks. Clearly, they wasn't there for mask mandates. They were there looking for trouble. And that's my opinion. I also feel that our government officials' addresses should not be listed publicly. It should be protected just like our federal judges and our federal prosecutors. Sarah never used any type of racial slurs that night. She never even engaged with those people that night. She stayed on the porch and videotaped the whole thing. These people said they were self-proclaimed peaceful protesters. What? There was nothing peaceful about that night or that evening. We had people out there threatening my mom, threatening my grandma, and threatening to kick a dog. Oh, and also let me include they was there threatening to burn down my grandmother's home. That is ridiculous. Ridiculous. Of course we was out there in the outrage because we want the same protection that was for Dr. Amy Atkins and also for Governor Gretchen Wilson. Government officials should be protected. And if you guys of the city of Akron would not protect our government officials, their family will by any means necessary.
I am Bill Nesbitt at 330-379-2235 and 1155 Diagonal Road within Akron 44307. All of you, first of all, have this great Christmas and New Year season through 2019, 2020, 2021 time frame of seasons. The other primary, again, let us decide that we do not have a moving of the position place of our Akron Beautiful Public Utilities because particularly our Governor, Michael DeWine, indicating that we're in a state of emergency in the purple as far as the coloring of a state of, again, meeting the urgency of our health crisis, shall we say. Michael DeWine stating that all should stay home unless going out only if necessary. As a city government, if we add to the necessity of going out, we're going against the directions of the governor and going against the directions of proper aid to our people. As far as arranging for payments without going to the office, Brian Reamer was saying of our utilities office was saying to me one could, of course, pay by phone. However, one does not have a bank account, so one cannot pay by the phone. So for those of those who have to at least use postage or mailing, mailing could take up more time than just traveling over to the drop-off. It requires postage, the expense of that, the time of proper preparation of something to be mailed, as opposed to just the simplicity of dropping off a envelope, a communications type preparation that can be just done basically to a drop-off. Traveling, those that will be within walking distance, such as those around the city hospital, Channelwood, Akron 11 area, would no longer be within that walking distance. So if you have for traveling an additional time and arrangements to handle those who travel by city bus, the 2, those who have 2 bus travel from back and forth to the position now have 4 buses. The additional exposure, plus the cold weather, plus the hospitals nearing capacity, plus primarily hospital staff. Again, with directions of our governor, we should not add to the traveling of the exposure by any people. Thank you all.
Good evening, Akron City Council. This is Carol Coleman Crane with Team Towing and Service, 645 Carroll Street, although you all already know me. Today's the last meeting of 2020, a very long and extremely challenging year. It's also the year that I hope Team Towing would be included in APD towing districts. In 2015, I met with representatives of the city. I received approval in April of 2016. I began attending city council meetings as well as meeting with individual council members. I became a certified minority business owner, began attending luncheons with Akron's minority business owners, and listened as many elected officials spoke on Akron's commitment to inclusion, diversity, and leveling the playing field. In just a few weeks, we're going to welcome in 2021, and this is the 6th year since I've been requesting being part of the towing districts for APD. Before the pandemic, I came before you nearly every week, asking to be included in the towing districts. A very uncomfortable and intimidating task for many. Many times I felt discouraged. I scanned your faces. Some of you looked at me with encouraging smiles. Some of you spoke to me and you encouraged me not to give up. Some of you have even come to my business. Thank you. Since the pandemic, Team Towing remained open 24 hours a day. We never missed a day of work. Team Towing continued to provide 24-hour emergency service to residents of Akron. Over 50% of Akron residents with AAA membership, Akron Postal Service, as well as Ohio State Highway Patrol. A government contract, a state contract, but I still do not have that city APD contract. We have approximately 30 employees. Our employees live in your ward. Their children attend your schools. They are educated, they're well-trained, and they're professionally attired. These employees depend on me to feed their families. My persistence is for their security. 2015, 2021. Mr. Hargrove, Fatima, many rental properties in Akron, Anita, community services, retired county worker, myself, all generating funds for Akron and asking you for your help. There are 7 districts. There's 5 towing companies providing services to 7 districts. I'm asking for a fair and equitable distribution of the 7 towing districts. I'm asking, I wish you all a safe and peaceful Christmas and New Year, and I'll see you in 2021.
That concludes the public comments we received for tonight.
Thank you so much for all those who participated during our public comment period. We'll now move into our committee assignments. Rules, Councilman Freeman.
245.
Public Safety, Councilman Kamer.
215.
Budget and Finance, Councilman Freeman.
3 p.m.
Parks and Rec, Councilman Neal.
145.
Planning and Economic Development, Councilman Fusco.
1.
Housing and Neighborhood Assistance, Councilman Fusco.
Subject to call.
Public Service, Councilwoman Samples.
2 p.m.
Health and Social Services, Councilwoman Amobian.
2:30.
Public Utilities, Councilman Freeman.
245.
Is there anything else coming before council? I do see Councilman Malik's hand.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I just wanted to briefly touch on the water shutoff issue that I mentioned last week. After our discussions last week, I was working on bringing in legislation about a moratorium, discussions with the law department. The administration of the water system is under the service director, and so it doesn't appear that council directly can implement a moratorium. But still we want to continue to work on this. The administration has also clarified that there, I believe, will not be, remaining shutoffs in December as part of the traditional holiday moratorium on shutoffs. But at the same time, I think that we do need to still look at making sure that we don't have water shutoffs in January and February while this pandemic is still raging. We had a moratorium on shutoffs this spring and summer when COVID cases were much lower. Now we're seeing 10,000, 11,000 new COVID cases a day here in Ohio. And we're under a county stay-at-home advisory that was extended earlier today. I really do appreciate the city administration, clarifying the water shutoffs won't happen over the holidays. The city continues to offer substantial financial assistance. But this doesn't justify shutting off 2,300 water accounts over the past few months. And it doesn't mean we should continue shutting off water accounts in January and February. I recognize that this is a complex, difficult issue, but we need a new moratorium on shutoffs to get folks through these next few months until the vaccine helps us return to normal. And shutting off access to water during a pandemic, during a public health crisis and a financial crisis fundamentally hits the most vulnerable among us. Like I said, this issue is one that will confront us more directly in January. And I hope to reach out to many of you in the meantime, and we can work with the city administration and find a way to resolve this. Also, I know it's late, but just want to briefly, echo Mayor Horgan's comments that he made at the outset. I know it's been a difficult year for everyone. It's been a difficult year for me in my first year in council, but I appreciate the kindness that all of you have extended to me. And I wish all of us the best in 2021. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilman Malik. Councilman Neal?
Yes, Madam Chair. First, in regards to assist with the concerns that Councilman Malik has expressed, it would be good if the city and the finance department report to us on legislation that was passed by this council in 2018 regarding the LIFT program. At that time, that program was a best practice program that addressed the concerns that Councilman Malik has asked by connecting those who had delinquent water bills with financial assistance programs so that we could see and address what their problems are. So if we could get a report on the legislation that was passed in 2018 regarding the LIFT program, it's a comprehensive program. I'll make sure that it's sent back out to all members of council. Also, it's disturbing as we talk about understanding what equity means, because to have Miss Carol Coleman Crane come before us for 5 years. Council, why haven't we acted? And I know somebody's going to say, well, why don't you say something? I sent an email back in February outlining how Councilwoman Terry Mosley Samples brought in legislation. The public safety chair said that he would bring in something better. That was 3 years ago, 2 years ago now, or maybe even, but nothing's come in. What is our delay? Ms. Coleman Crane mentioned 3 other items. Mr. Hargrove, our city workers and the healthcare plan. Tell me one issue that we've addressed, either saying we can't help, but we don't sit down and we don't discuss these things. What is our delay on addressing Ms. Carol Coleman Crane's issue? I mean, it's concerning to me. We don't pass legislation for us to have a collective understanding of what equity means. But yet here's a perfect example of someone who's been coming before this council for 5 years, asking for equitable access to economic opportunity. And she's just one of many. And this council we haven't done anything. And please don't say because I know how to write policy. I know how to address this issue. I've brought this before this council. I've sent emails to the chair, but we haven't acted. And so, I don't know how the rest of you feel, but to me, as a collective body, we are delinquent on our responsibilities to our constituents. And because we took special initiative at the beginning of the year on having people sign and so that we could assign them to a specific person, Ms. Coleman Crane came back in January, February. Who was this assigned to, and who was supposed to address this and bring it back to council? Because I know I asked, I know Ms. Mosley Samples asked, why haven't we acted as council?
Councilman Neal, are you done?
Well, I'm waiting for an answer, Madam Chair.
I don't know what answer that you're looking for. You
Well,
did bring up.
here's
Councilman Neal, please don't interrupt me. You said you're asking for an answer.
Well,
what I can give you is because you did bring up Mr. Hargrove, and so again, it's more about just talking about it. It's about doing the work, and we've done the work as it relates to Mr. Hargrove.
What about Ms. Coleman Crane?
Well, I'm just saying you brought up Mr. Hargrove, so I'm just commenting to that particular one. But it's about doing the work.
Okay.
And meeting with people, having conversations, getting creative, and figuring things out. We've been able to do that for Mr. Hargrove. I do see Councilwoman Samples' hand is raised, and maybe she can better answer your question because she has been diligently working on this issue with Mrs. Coleman Crane. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to say this publicly to Mrs. Carol Coleman Crane. I have not stopped working this issue. I stay in constant contact with her. I do stay in constant contact with Brian over at Kenny's Automotive as well. It's not just her, it's the both of them, and they've been at this for years. My intentions were to bring in something this week, but as you all know, my life has been a little crazy lately. And so I didn't want to rush it and then it get voted down, seeing that she meets all the state requirements, seeing that he meets all the state requirements. So all of those who have visited her shop, you see what kind of business that they're running. I mean, it's pristine. They do a good job. They have more new tow vehicles than any other tow company in the city. You see them everywhere. Right. So my hope is when we come back as a council that we bring in comprehensive legislation to address this issue, because if we want to talk about being fair and equitable, we don't want to leave minorities, which include women, out of the conversation. So I want us all to be thinking about that and what that looks like. It doesn't have to just be what I brought in last time. Everybody can look in what I brought in last time. I believe it was sent to everybody, and we can add to it to make sure it's done the right way. But 5 years is a long time. Is one of the very first people I met when I came on council, and have stayed with her steadfast through this all. And I keep in touch with Brian as well. But at this point, something needs to be done, and it needs to be done collectively by us all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman Samples. Well said. Is there anything else coming before council? If not, we did receive a comment from our colleague, Councilman Swirsky, and I told him I would read it in. Thank you to all council members who have reached out with kind words of encouragement. Thank you to other public officials and citizens as well. To everyone, have a happy holiday season. And also, in the words of Rich Swirsky, go Browns. So Rich Swirsky, thank you so much. Again, you are in our prayers. Council, we want to say happy holidays to each and every one of you and to your families. We will be on recess. This body will meet again January 4th, 2021. If there's nothing else coming before this body, we have a motion to adjourn. If there are no objections, meeting adjourned.
Concludes the live broadcast of Akron City Council. Margot Somerville, President of Council, presiding.